Right then, so we're going to have a look at Act 5 of Macbeth now. The final act of the play, so everything has been building to this point, and it opens with Act 5, Scene 1. You'll notice the scenes are quite short, it's quite episodic in nature, it moves quite quickly from one part of the action to the other. Act 5, Scene 1 opens with Lady Macbeth walking in her sleep, and she started her descent into madness, driven mad by a couple of things. First of all, the guilt, I suppose, finally catching up with her. Whereas in Act 1 she was accusing Macbeth of being a coward. The mental consequences of the actions of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have caught up with her. And so she's kind of talking in her sleep. And this idea that she's been robbed of the sleep that she was kind of, trying to urge Macbeth to just go to bed and forget about the murder of Duncan in Act 1 and Act 2, it's now kind of come back to haunt her. And this idea that she's kind of walking around talking about the various things that have happened, and she rubs her hands, yet here's a spot, out damn spot, out I say. Quite an important quotation here, obviously. This spot of blood represents the psychological impact of guilt. The idea that she's almost physically marked on her hands and she can't kind of rub this spot clean. And of course it's all a figment of her imagination, it's not real, but she is marked by the spot represents the spot of guilt, the physical representation of the psychological impact of guilt that she feels. She also speaks in prose here, not iambic pentameter, so she's lost her kind of mind and status as she goes through this here as well. And she starts to talk, here's the smell of blood still, all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. And bear in mind, we haven't seen Lady Macbeth in Act 3, Scene 4. She's now completely marginalised. She's lost her mind in Act 4. And it's interesting that we don't see her during the murder of Macduff and Macduff's family. This idea that I think it's the Fassbender version of the film makes this point where she's present when they're murdered, but we don't see her there. Of course we don't. But interestingly, maybe it's the murder of an innocent woman and her children that are too much for this person. So nothing will ever clear her of her actions and her guilt. And this idea that she's kind of reliving, almost sleepwalking and reliving the events of Act 2, Scene 2. To bed, there's knocking at the gate, Act 2, Scene 3, where Macduff arrives with the knocking. And this is, of course, the last time she had control in the relationship. So yes, she's been driven mad by the guilt, by the mental consequences of her actions, but she's reliving the last time she actually commanded her husband, when she had stability in their relationship, but she's now completely powerless. He has taken control of the situation to the point that he doesn't tell her in Act 3, Scene 2, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, doesn't tell her about what's happening with Banquo, and then continues to commit murder after murder. It's almost like she has created the monster through provoking him to kill Duncan, but this monster is intent on murder and murder and murder, and she can't live with the consequences of this. And the doctor says she needs more the divine than the physician. She's God forgive us all. She needs God, not a doctor. Doctor comes to look after her, but there's nothing he can do because she is beyond medical help and arguably beyond spiritual help as well. The consequence of appealing to those murdering ministers to take her milk for gall, to turn her to this evil being to do what's necessary. And then we flip from this scene to Act 5, Scene 2, where the English and Scottish armies, they kind of join forces. Lots of Scottish rebels who have gradually left Scotland and come down to England, the English army marching northward. They've realised that Macbeth is evil, so they've switched sides to get rid of him. And you've got this kind of situation, the Scottish rebel forces are gathering and they're talking about Caithness, great Dunstan, and he's strongly fortified. Some say he's mad, others do call it valiant fury. And Angus, now does he feel his secret murder sticking on his hands? Everyone knows these minor characters, these minor thanes, they are aware of what he's done. And also those he commands move only in command, nothing in love. So Macbeth is gradually, his followers are dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. There's just him and a couple of people left alone in this castle. And the only people do it move because they're afraid. He commands them. He has no loyalty from his subject. Think about Duncan and think about what Malcolm was talking about in Act 4, Scene 3 about being a good king. He's not a good man. So people only move because he forces them to do that. And think about, world leaders around the world. Do we remember him as the leader that we love and somebody who created that sense of love, and you do things because you wanted to please that person, or is it just because they are evil and will command and tell you what to do? Great quotation, like a giant's robe upon a dwarfish thief. Macbeth is a dwarfish thief in this situation, in this simile, stealing the crown, And whatever he wants, and there's lots in Act 5 about diminishing Macbeth as a character, because essentially he murders Duncan, Banquo, arranges for Fleance to be murdered, but obviously Fleance escapes. You've got Macduff's wife, Macduff's children. You've got all these murders happening, and for nothing, because he's not the heir to the throne, and he can't pass this on as well. And obviously, a giant's robe is Duncan and the honourable king of Scotland, what a king should do, and he's just a mere dwarfish thief. It's a lovely quotation. And Angus is here, whereas we've equivocated, we've kind of double talked in the past. People have been afraid to say the truth. Angus is now speaking openly against Macbeth. It's a case of, right, he's evil, we need to stop him, he needs to be stopped. And the English and Scottish forces march north to attack. And Macbeth learns of this, so we go back to Dunsinane Castle, where Macbeth is kind of watching what's going on. And the servant, there are 10,000 geese, soldiers, sir, go prick thy face, what soldiers pass, what's patched, what soldiers wave face. Can't believe the 10,000. And this idea that Macbeth is on his own here. I have lived long enough, my way of life is fallen into the sear, the yellow leaf, and that which should accompany old age, as honour, love, obedience, troops of friends I must not look to have. Curse is not loud, but deep mouth honour breathe, which the poor heart would fain deny and dare not. This idea, even though he's been told he's invincible, there are 10,000 English soldiers and English and Scottish soldiers marching towards Dunsinane Castle, and he hasn't got the army anymore. So there are 10,000 people marching towards him, even though he's been told he's invincible, so in theory he can just fight them until he gets tired. He's still contemplating his own death here, and looking for honour, love, obedience, troops of friends I must not look to have. This idea, he's not going to have these things in life and in the afterlife. He's lost everything there. And he realises then it's Satan, his servant, Seyton, but interestingly, on my phone for Satan, Satan, the devil, I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked. This idea that he will die, he's losing power, and he's essentially alone with a couple of followers to fight the entirety of the English-Scottish army. Hang those that talk of fear. Remember, we were talking about being a cruel leader. His inhumanity, anyone who's a coward, any of my soldiers or thanes still here, anyone who's talking about being afraid when they're facing the 10,000, hang them. They deserve to be killed. They don't deserve to live. They're cowards. And it's interesting, we've seen this in Frankenstein. I mean, you don't get marks for comparing the two, but you've seen it with Frankenstein when they're talking about pushing north towards the North Pole. Come on, this is your great honour to go to the North Pole. Come on, you must strive for greatness. This idea, his arrogance, one of his hamartia, I suppose, this idea that he is so arrogant and so full of his own sense of hubris that he doesn't realise that he's essentially sending innocent people to their deaths. He's a tyrannical ruler. He will kill and fight ultimately until his death. And as we go kind of through to Act 5, Scene 4, you've got the army arrive, and one of the things they realise is that they're trying to hide themselves. They come up with the plan of using Birnam Wood as cover to disguise the true number. There's 10,000 of them, so obviously if we want to try and hide 10,000 people, let's all hide behind some trees. And this is the first prophecy that the witches have revealed to Macbeth that's coming true. They've said, beware Macduff. They have said that he can't be harmed by anyone born of woman, so he believes he's invincible. And now, they said, you're safe until Birnam Wood comes to Dunsinane, and here we are. They've chopped down the trees. The army is marching towards Dunsinane Castle, and the audience, we recognise this as the end for Macbeth. He is going to get what is coming to him. This confident tyrant, that's how Macbeth's described, and as his hamartia is overconfidence in the supernatural, just overconfidence in general. He's too confident, so he's not going to expect these trees marching towards Dunsinane Castle. And as they march, the battle starts. This is quite an interesting scene for the end of Macbeth, where he's at his full tyrannical nature. We know as an audience he's going to die. He believes he's in control, and he's ready to fight the English, even though he's not in control. Rebels are deserting Macbeth as he is too evil. Were they not forced by those that should be ours, we might have met them dareful beard to beard and beat them backward home. So Macbeth is such an evil ruler that literally now as he's about to try and fight the 10,000 English and Scottish forces that are marching towards Dunsinane Castle to kill him, People are leaving him now. Hold on a minute, I don't fancy this. I'm going to go and join the English and Scottish. And he would have fought them if he had time now. He's such an evil, corrupt, tyrannical ruler. There's a cry within of women which undermines his masculinity here. He's behaving like the man Lady Macbeth wanted to be. Let's kill everyone. Let's fight and kill everyone. What's that noise? It's the cry of women, my lord. I've almost forgot the taste of fears. I have supped full of horrors, diners familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot one start me. So the cry of women reminds him of humanity, reminds him of tenderness, reminds him of, fear. And he's almost forgotten what fear was like. I have supped full with horrors, diners familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot one start me. So he's not bothered by this. Evil has no impact on him. He's become so evil and so used to murder. Why was that cry? The queen, my lord, is dead. She should have died hereafter. Whether that is hereafter victorious in that battle, whether it's with a proper burial, waiting for him, maybe he's aware of his own death. And there's an interesting kind of quotation here. This idea of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusky death. Studying Macbeth kind of beyond GCSE, there's a lovely kind of comment about the passage of time here and the depressingly somewhat the futility of life. Tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. This idea that he reflects on his own mortality, because we're Act 5, Scene 5, we're very near the end of the play. We as the audience know he's going to die. As a character, he knows he's going to die. His wife's death is another reminder, as is Burnham Wood marching to Dunsinane, that he is, the tomorrows are going to escape him. And it's this predestined nature of life. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Lovely quotation from Macbeth reflecting on his own mortality. It's quite glum to think about, but I suppose life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Basically, you get your turn on the stage and then you're gone. You have your role and then you die, you're no more. It's a reflection on his own mortality, his impending death. His turn of life is coming to an end, as his wife's just has. But also it's this idea of this predetermined, predestined nature of life. This is all it can be to him. And also, of course, his story is going to be heard no more in the history book, because he's got no legacy or heir to pass on. We've seen how earlier on in the play he was furious because he'd done everything for Banquo's heirs, for them. And there's nothing for him to pass on. Reflecting on my own life, I have children who I will pass on, I was about to say my legacy to, that sounds a bit of a strange thing, but my life, my memory will live on through my children and my children's children, and that's how these family trees work. For Macbeth, there was him and his wife, there was their child that died, and now there is just him. And his life is coming to an end. And it's a really depressing tale. But even further than this, it is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. A superb metaphor to describe Macbeth's reign. An idiot. He has killed all these people for nothing. His idiotic overambition to be king, well, what has that got you? Over the course of this play, all it has got you is your wife is dead, the man who found you in great trust and elevated you to Thane of Cawdor is dead, your best friend is dead, his child has fled, you've murdered an innocent wife and children, and your death is now coming. Macbeth is the idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, a superb metaphor for his reign. And it's a metaphor for those people in society, wider society, who push beyond their realms, who, politicians, world leaders, who make kind of false promises or do cruel acts, tyrants who do evil things, and ultimately, at the end of their reign, when they're dead, and there's nothing that can be done about that. Their reign of terror, like Macbeth's, will come to an end. And remember why Shakespeare does this as well. Macbeth is evil. Macbeth subverts the great chain of being. This idea that if I as an audience we associate with Macbeth as the idiot, full of sound and fury, and his end comes to nothing, then the opposite is that we praise the fact that we have the rightful king at the throne at the end. Thank God we got rid of this idiot, this violent idiot. He's gone, and we can focus on the rightful king, Malcolm, at the end, and sat watching the play, we can focus on the rightful King James too. So Birnam Wood comes to Dunstanton Castle, and Macbeth basically accuses the messenger of telling this as being a liar. He now realises he's under threat. He's had this moment to think about his lifetime, and he now realises that he's under threat. And at least we'll die with our harness on our back. So he's going to die fighting. He's going to die as a warrior. That's ultimately all he is. He's a warrior. He's a soldier. But he's going to die fighting. He's going to kill more people unnecessarily. You know, he's a tyrant. He just wants to murder and murder and murder and murder and murder. He doesn't stop and think, right, well, I'm going to die here, so I might as well accept my death and my fate. It was meant to be. I might as well kill a few more English and Scottish people, you know, just to add to my death count, rather than actually take responsibility for my actions and accept my fate. He just wants to destroy and kill for the sake of it, really, at this point, which makes him evil and a tyrant. Act 5, Scene 6, so the battle starts. Malcolm and the English forces, led by Seward, and Macduff, the Scottish forces, they start to fight. So you've got England, the English army, and Malcolm's Scottish rebels, all the people who've left Macbeth, versus Scotland, which is Macbeth, and at this stage a handful of thanes who are there. And the short scenes here hasten Macbeth's doom. The fact that we're flicking from one bit to the next, one bit to the next, one bit to the next. And in the midst of the battle, they have tied me to a stake, I cannot fly, but bear-like I must fight the course. This is quite an interesting point here, this quotation, so I'll talk you through this in a little bit. First of all, Malcolm Macduff or the witches, or himself, who's tied him to this stake? But if you're tying someone to a stake, you've got the picture of the bear here. This idea there, they can't fully fight. They're not fully in control of where they are, who they're fighting against. So he's weakened, he's tied to this stake, but he must keep fighting to fulfill his destiny. I cannot fly, and it's interesting who has flown. We've had Fleance who's flown, the amount of bird imagery that's been used in the play so far to describe people escaping and flying. He cannot fly. He's got to face his actions. Bear-like I must fight the course. Bears are obviously incredibly powerful creatures, but if they're chained, they're powerless. This idea that Macbeth knows he's just a pawn in life. He's been reflecting about the fact that, you know, maybe he's starting to realise being played by the witches here. They've made him do these things. He knows that his death is coming. He must fight the course. It's also quite interesting that this Macbeth and the bear-like I must fight the course can be seen as a metaphor for Shakespeare himself. This idea that he felt like he had to write something to praise James I. Shakespeare was employed, he was part of the King's Men with James I. This idea that he feels like he's got to put on these plays to appease James I as a new king. Shakespeare's contemporaries, the people who are writing at the same time as him, Marlowe and Kidd, were just as good as him. But we remember Shakespeare and we study Shakespeare because he had to constantly be better. He had to keep fighting the course as an author to keep writing. And also, Shakespeare had to write this to praise James I. We believe that he was favourable towards James I anyway, because of his father's implication as a kind of an outsider in the Gunpowder Plot. This idea that his father there were rumours about his father being involved in the Gunpowder Plot to assassinate James I. So this idea that he feels like he's got to fight the course. Yes, it's Macbeth, but it could also be seen as Shakespeare himself here. Young Seward, which is the son of Seward, the head of the English army, appears and challenges Macbeth. Bear in mind, Macbeth knows that he can't be killed by anyone born of woman, and he knows that he's going to die at this point because Birnam Wood has come into Dunstanton Castle, so he just brutally murders young Seward. This is often missed out actually of a lot of film versions, but I believe it's shown in one of the modern ones on Apple TV. Thou liest aboard a tyrant with my sword, and Seward is killed. This is the first murder we've actually seen Macbeth perform on stage. Everything else is done by murderers off stage, and it's the first person who Macbeth physically kills with his own bare hands. We see Duncan off stage, and it's a pathetic act of desperation. He doesn't need to murder Seward, he just does it because he can. It's tyrannical, evil behaviour. But swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by a man that's of a woman born. He's mocking Seward's death. He's just murdered this young man, and he's laughing at him. And the others he has killed and will kill, and he continues to kill as we go through. And Macduff enters. Tyrant, show thy face. If thou be slain and with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. So remember we talked about this in Act 4. Now Macduff has just cause to revenge the death of his family. He needed them to die to have a reason to justifiably kill Macbeth, and he now has that, and he wants to be the person who kills him. If you're slain with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still, like Banquo's ghost has haunted Macbeth. So he wants to be the person who gets revenge. Act 5, Scene 8, then, is the final kind of confrontation between the two. We're nearly at the end of the play. Macbeth contemplates, he's in the middle of fighting here, why should I play the Roman fool and die on mine own sword? In Roman honour, suicide was seen as an honourable thing. So Macbeth is kind of saying, look, I might as well just keep killing all these English people. No one kill me, la 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 la, going around stabbing people on the battlefield. Why should I kill myself? He knows he's close to death, but he chooses a dishonourable death. He chooses to keep on murdering and killing unnecessarily. We've just seen him brutally murder Seward on stage for no reason at all, other than the fact that he can. He's evil, so why should he throw himself upon his sword, which is what Roman honour did. They demanded suicide rather than surrender. And this is the ultimate battle of good versus evil. And Macduff appears. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. I've already killed your wife and kids. Thou losest labour. So they're fighting. Look, you're wasting your time. You can't kill me. I bear a charmed life which must not yield to one of women born. Macduff then says, despair thy charm, and let the angel whom still thou serve tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. So, he was delivered by caesarean section. I know this is a bit of a jump. It's a play, it's not real life, but obviously, think about mortality rates back in the 1600s when Shakespeare is writing, in the medieval era when the play is set. Ultimately, Macduff's mother dies as he's being removed from the womb. So he is born of a woman, but he isn't born via natural birth, and obviously his mother has probably died in childbirth as well. For it hath cowed my better part of man. So Macbeth hears this and he becomes instantly weak with shock and like a coward. So the second prophecy, and the third by association, has come true. He's told not to fear one born of woman. Macduff is there. Beware Macduff is what the witches have said, and he's not born of a woman. So this is destiny, fate, meeting him head on. And Macbeth says, I'll not fight with thee. He gives up, which is the morally right thing to do. Take your punishment for all these brutal things you've done and lose your life. Ultimately, if you get killed by Macduff, that's exactly what you deserve for the murder of Macduff's family. So accept your punishment. The right thing to do, the guilty plea, as it were. Macduff then says, then yield thee, coward, and live to be thy show and gaze at the time. We'll have thee as our rarer monsters are, painted upon a pole and underwrit. Here may you see the tyrant. So what they're going to do, Macduff taunts Macbeth here. He says, look, okay, you don't fight me. What we'll do is we'll kill you. We'll chop you up into little bits. We'll hang, drawn and quarter you. We'll send you around the country and we'll stick a little pole underneath you that says, here may you see the tyrant, which has the effect. I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet and be baited with the rabble's curse, the contempt for poor, the people who he was supposed to serve as the King of Scotland. Though Burnham would be come to Dunsinane, and though the opposed being of no woman born, yet I will try the last. Yes, what the witches have said has all come true, but I'm going to keep on fighting. I'm going to fight to the end. Which is all he can do, because that's what he's used to. He's a warrior. He's used to fighting and murder. Lay on, Macduff, and damn be him that first cries hold enough. And they have their fight. You'll see this better in the film versions. It's incredibly theatrical. The fighting literally takes place over one sentence. They have a fight, and Macbeth is killed. And, like Lady Macbeth, earlier on in Act 5, Macbeth's death is a punishment for his crimes. And his crimes are many. Regicide, infanticide, the murder of innocent people, his belief in the supernatural, his subversion of the great chain of being, belief in the supernatural. Bear in mind, of course, the fact he put so much belief in the supernatural, and King James, the king at the time of Shakespeare, would be watching this, wanting Macbeth to be punished for, because that's what he wanted people in his society to do. He didn't want them to believe in witches. Subversion of the great chain of being, the gunpowder plot, the fact that you've had somebody in Macbeth, an upstart who has decided to commit mass murder to take power, to take the throne of Scotland, completely destroying the great chain of being. He deserves to be killed for that. And now he's going to be subject to ridicule for his horrific crimes. We're not going to remember him as the great Macbeth as we might have done with Duncan. Think about it. Queen Elizabeth died recently, and obviously we remember Queen Elizabeth as being a great, great queen. But we're not going to think about Macbeth in that way. He's a mere murderer. That's all he'll ever be, and it's best summed up in Act 5, Scene 9 in a minute. And this idea of Lady Macbeth as well, her death is justification for provoking her husband to commit all these horrific things. Act 5, Scene 9 then. So the play doesn't end with the death of Macbeth. The play ends with Malcolm being crowned as king. So they're kind of reflecting on the battle. Death is a small price to pay. Some must go off, some must die. Small price to pay to rid Scotland of Macbeth. Even Seward, the head of the English army, loses his son. And Seward kind of reflects on this, interesting kind of opposite to Macduff. Had I as many sons as I have heirs, I would not wish them to be a fairer death, and so his knell is knolled. This idea, he's worth more sorrow, and I'll spend for him. So Seward's son, the head of the English army, his son dies. Malcolm says he's worth more sorrow. He's almost learned from Macduff's compassion there. I must feel it as a man, which we've seen in Act 4. You can't just think about it's good that your son's dead and he's died an honourable death. Mourn your son. He's worth no more. They say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him. And it's interesting Seward's response there. So still, even right at the end of the play, this idea of masculinity is being challenged. And then the last page. Hail King. So Macduff enters with Macbeth's head. For so thou art. The first thing Macduff does is give the head of Macbeth, the traitor, to Malcolm, the rightful king. Remember, Macduff has no claim to be king. No witches have said Macduff will be king. He shouldn't be king. Malcolm should be the rightful king. Before Duncan died, he pronounced that Malcolm was going to be the king. Whether we agree with his decision or not to do that, that's his decision. So Malcolm should be the king. Macduff is a good character then, because what he does is he doesn't use the power of the fact he's just been the person to murder Macbeth. He doesn't milk it. He doesn't kind of want praise. He just wants order to be restored for Scotland. So he says, right, I've killed Macbeth for you. There's his head. There you go. You're now the king. Because he's an honest and good character, and he believes in the great chain of being. He believes that the King Duncan, there's the King of Scotland. He said that Malcolm should be king, so Malcolm should be king. And I'll do everything I can to make that happen. And think about Macduff, he does. He loses his wife and children. He has to go through immense struggle. He has to fight Macbeth and face Macbeth. And here we are now with the good people back. He empowers the rightful ruler and the great chain of being. Hail King of Scotland, hail King of Scotland. So it ends with a speech by Malcolm. So, what they do, my Thanes and kinsmen henceforth be earls, the first that ever Scotland in such an honour named. So he renounces earls, gets rid of the title of Thanes and earls. And obviously James I is the first king who unites England and Scotland as the United Kingdom. So this is what Malcolm is doing. We're going to have new titles and we're going to restore Scotland to what it used to be. As James I, Shakespeare's trying to say, James I is a great king and he's going to make Great Britain this great country. Be planted newly with the times, calling home our exiled friends aboard that fled the snares of watchful tyranny. So they're going to get everyone back from Scotland who should have been there. They don't need to worry. What's interesting about Malcolm is producing the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen. An absolutely superb quotation said by Malcolm to sum up Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's reign. Macbeth, at the end of all this, the 100 pages you've read, all he's known as is a dead butcher. All he does is murder people. That's all he's done. He's not a good king. He's not a leader. He's not going to restore faith in humanity. He just murders people and he's now dead. And his wife, the fiend-like queen, all she is, she is a devil worshipper. She is a witch by any other name there as well. And she gets her justice there as well. So, and also she gets the double damning of committing suicide, who it is thought by self and violent hands took off her life, which was seen as great taboo in society. So they're not remembered. It's not great Macbeth, brave Macbeth, noble Macbeth as it was at the start. They are remembered for being a dead butcher, someone who just kills, and a fiend-like queen, an evil queen. A superb quotation to learn, which basically sums up their behaviour throughout the entirety of the play. And so the play ends on a positive, with Malcolm being crowned at Scone, the castle where coronations take place. There's a trumpet and a fanfare and everyone goes off to the coronation. So it ends with Macbeth being condemned, Lady Macbeth being condemned, Malcolm as the rightful king, Macduff supporting Malcolm as one of his earls, everyone else restored back to their normal positions. But it's really interesting, and this isn't perhaps beyond the realms of GCSE. First of all, do we trust Malcolm? Given Act 4, Scene 3, when he was trying to manipulate Macduff to fight for him, and he was having that kind of test of loyalty, where he's talking about all the, the lust and greed that he was going to give into. Do we trust him to be a good king? Because this is the end of the play. We don't see what happens from Malcolm. Do we get the peaceful ending that he actually promises there? The other thing, Fleance. Fleance is not related to Malcolm. So at some point, the witch's prophecy that Banquo's kids will be king, and he will have a procession of kings from his ancestors. So Fleance is somewhere as a child in Scotland. So will it be Fleance? Will it be Fleance's children? Will it be Fleance's children's children? How is that going to relate to Malcolm and Malcolm's children and Malcolm's children's children? At some point, somebody is going to take power, one of Fleance's ancestors, to take the throne from Malcolm and Malcolm's ancestors. And this isn't answered within the play. So although the play on a happy, in inverted commas, note, they're all going off to see Malcolm be crowned, there are still some questions. We've still just witnessed the destruction of Macbeth's reign. So we've got Scotland to piece itself back together. Do we believe that Malcolm's going to be the right person to do this? And also, what's going to happen with Fleance? The witches have prophesied, everything the witches have prophesied has come true, largely because Macbeth has made it become true. And when Shakespeare wrote the play, James I is a real-life descendant of the real-life Banquo. So clearly, Banquo's children will become kids because in real life you've got one sat in the audience watching this play. So how does that happen with Malcolm currently on the throne at the end? And where does Fleance and his children and children's children come into it? So the play ends obviously with a damning attack on Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, but also more questions as to how long will this peace last? And what will be restored. So obviously we focus very much on Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, but you've also got some questions to ask about these other characters, Malcolm and Macduff, the good characters who restore goodness to Scottish society, but for how long will that goodness last? And it's quite a dark ending to the play there as well.